saying what was his experience. Do you know what I mean? So I was in the army. I'm 62. I was in the army.
Do you want to go? Just wait a moment.
Oh, sorry.
We just do a little thing at the beginning that I think Warren is going to set just some guidelines for respectful discussion.
Okay.
And then Malaika will is going to read a poem, and then we'll introduce you. Would that be okay?
No problem. No problem.
Brilliant. So if everyone else would like to mute themselves, apart from Warren and Malaika, that'd be great.
We are recording this session, as you are probably aware. And Malaika, do you want to start with the poem, or do you want me to do the sort of?
Yeah, I'll start with the poem. I've got a Black History Month poem this month. Spirit of abundance, God of grace, Mother of hope. We pause now to remember these stories that are all around us. This month in our nation's character is Black History Month. Help us to realise that Black history is all our histories. May the day come when these stories are so widely taught that no month need be separately divided. We know this day will not come until we as a people make different choices. We pray now for those new choices. We come to see a day where the prison system becomes redemptive, a day where the legal system learns to focus more squarely on the facts and not the colours of our skin. A day where our schools are as well funded as the needs demand. May our role models be allowed to excel when they thrive and not to take down their inch of heritage. We know this will require a shift in power, and this can be scary for some. Give those full of fear hope. May we come to know grace, so that our hearts will not be hardened to the pain around us. There are so many beautiful stories needed to be told, and we need to get to the chance to hear them. Widen our vision so that the history that is shared this month and every month come to be known as our history too. We are the most human when we see the humanity in others. Over to you, Warren.
Thank you, Malaika. Beautiful poem. I think most of us here are aware, but just to make sure we are familiar with the expectations, I suppose. After Trevor has spoken, thank you very much for filling in tonight, Trevor. There'll be an opportunity for questions. Not questions, not statements or stories of other personal experiences. We will hopefully be able to create other opportunities for those if we need to. You can put questions initially in the chat while Trevor's talking. There's also one thing that we realized we needed to point out during the first few seminars, as many of you are aware, that there is a difference between Black Lives Matter and prejudice against other BAME and minority groups. And that Black Lives Matter is not saying that only Black Lives Matter. Our starting point is that all lives matter. And we're addressing the acute and current issue that Black Lives Matter and that the lives of Black people are in danger. Ironically and incredibly in the 21st century, or maybe not so ironically, and there are fairly clear reasons for that. And that racism against Black people has been and is worse than against other groups. We told the story of the parable of the lost sheep, which I won't go into, but there are examples where religious leaders, Jesus, Moses, others were caring just for whoever it was, whatever it was in need, a lost sheep or lamb. Other cases where there's need, that's where we have to respond. And that's very clearly where we're coming from, I think, with our projects of faith in Black Lives Matter. It's a space here for us tonight and through the rest of the seminars to come together and learn more about Black Lives Matter, to listen, learn and ask questions. If you may well find it best to set your screen to speaker view so you can actually see the main speaker, and which is the control of the top right of your screen, which will help you see and focus on Trevor or whoever else is speaking more clearly. And if you don't want to be seen on the recording, you can just turn off your video. It will be lovely to see you all and for all of us to participate. So thank you. Trevor, over to you. And unless Mike wants to say anything about him first.
Yeah, I call Trevor my brother, my spiritual brother. We do argue like cat and dog, but I know he still adores me, so it don't matter how many times we argue. Trevor's been a long-standing actual comedian in our community. He's been making us laugh for many years. He's a very strong character, and he's very active in our community, especially when we're protesting or we need bodies to come together to fight the cause. And he's been around a long, long time, and he's got a lot of respect in our community as well.
Oh, right. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, well, where do I start? Yeah. Trevor Lynch, I call myself a Mossfordian. I was raised in Moss Side and Salford, so I'm proud of both of those. People say to me, oh, where are you from? And I say I'm mixed race, half Salford, half Moss Side. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, I've been an actor for a very long time, professional actor, stroke comedian, yes, do a lot of stuff. I joined the army in 1976, a group of us, 5 of us, as an adventure. That's what was sold to us, the old recruitment office in Fountain Street. Unemployment was high, obviously. Prospect wasn't great. The only thing we were probably ever taught in school were you're going to work on a building site. Females became telephonists, and lads became builders. That was our era. One of our friends had joined the army, and that's if 5 of us thought, we'll go and do it. We saw the advertising campaign in Fountain Street one day when we were walking around the old underground market and in Market Street, and we thought we'd see what it's about. Obviously, they sold it to us well. They said that we'd all be together, which we thought was great. But obviously, that wasn't the case. So that was the first lie when we all got our papers and we met up at Piccadilly train station, and then we were shipped out to various training centres. I went to Oswestry in Shropshire, which was junior leaders, and my friends went various other places throughout the country. First of all, I was attached to the Lancashire Fusiliers, but because I knew a few friends who were in the King's Regiment, and they said the catchment area for Manchester was the King's Regiment and also the Liverpool Regiment. So you can imagine my regiment was half Scouts, half Manx. We excelled in football and fighting. So we had the best boxing team in the whole of the British Army and the best football team. We also had the massive, I suppose, distinction, honour, whatever you want to label it. We had the most black serving soldiers in the whole of the British Army at one stage. So the battalion probably then was round about, say, 300 men, of which a good 240, 250 were black servicemen. Racism was rife from the day of training. When we first went to Shropshire, to Oswestry, it was clear, you know, we were told who we were, what we were. Lots of horrendous scenarios, not only from the NCOs who were in charge of us, but also the civilian staff, who also we came across obviously for lunchtime, etc., and we're told in known certain ways if we were a bit jovial or boisterous to expletives, and the M word was used quite regularly. You know, the NCOs treated us like that. Although we had numbers, we were always called derogatory terms. You know, I'm sure you've all heard the terms black people have been called, so I don't really have to reiterate that. So racism was rife within my tenure in the services. I served 7 years. I was in conflicts in Northern Ireland where I'd lost 5 mates, unfortunately, and the Falklands. And it was really weird because when it came out, well, while I was in there, I used to do sort of like poetry and a bit of acting stuff and whatever like that. I suppose you call it like the old gang shows, suppose, or whatever. When it came out, a friend of mine was a professional actor. I appeared in a amateur production of Vice of Men by Steinbeck, and there was a producer in the audience, and he said he should do it professionally, which I hoo-ha'd it. But then at 30 years of age, I decided to go back to drama college with a massive, it was inspirational influence. There's a woman called Helen Parry. I don't know if you know her, but she's a director, but she was a tutor over at Abraham Moss College and the Arden School of Theatre. And she was strongly supportive of me. Because again, it was her thing, you know, there should be more black actors, etc., etc. But in terms of the army, yes, it was rife with racism. Wherever we went, it didn't matter where we deployed, whether it was Canada, Norway, like I said, Northern Ireland. That was always, there was never probably a day where there wasn't a scenario of upset in terms racially. I reached the rank of corporal. After a year, I was busted down to lance corporal. We had 1 black sergeant within our regiment, and he lasted 2 months. Because the fact was they didn't want any blacks within the sergeant's mess. That's the way it was, you know. Upon leaving, you have to go and visit the RSM and get your letters of, you know, commendation, etc., etc. And I remember going into the RSM. He was from Manchester. He was from Moss Side. White regiment sergeant major, who everyone knew he was completely racist. What outlined it to me with him was in 1977, when one of my friends, who was 21, had been killed in Northern Ireland. And I asked, could I go to his funeral? And he told me no in certain terms that I wasn't going. But, well, we don't want any blacks at his funeral. You didn't even know him, blah, 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 which everyone knew that wasn't the case. But when I was leaving the army, 81, I had to go and see him. And he just said to me, he said, and if you ever mention about racism within this regiment, we'll have you back here before you can, you know, your feet will touch the ground. Because you remember when you leave the army, you're also a reservist for a matter of years, you know, which he could call you back. So he said, we have ways of getting you back here, blah, blah, blah. But I was very vocal. I'm quite a vociferous person. And like Malaika says, you know, I wasn't wanting to keep my mouth shut, etc. A lot of other black British servicemen didn't feel strong enough that they could do that. You know, it's just the way it was. Takes all sorts. But I remember coming home and going into a pub in Salford with my best friend. And as I walked in, there was a guy that sat there, probably about 45, 50, and he said, what the effing hell is this N-word doing in here? Get them out of the country or put them in the army. And my friend who was white said, well, for your information, he's just done effing 7 years in the army. And he's born and bred here.
I think Trevor's frozen, unless it's my screen that's frozen, but hopefully we'll get him back in a second. It even happens on the national news, so we'll hopefully Trevor, are you with us? We'll get there. So Well, while we're waiting for Trevor to come back, go on, Malaika, do you want to say something? No, you're just looking as well. Okay. So I'll come back to gallery view.
It looks like it's frozen, doesn't it?
Yes, it looks. I think it's probably realised and sort of come out, and hopefully will come back in. So quite harrowing.
It sounds like the world. Someone doesn't want us to hear about army racism for some reason.
It could be, couldn't it? But quite horrendous, really, if you think about it. Yeah, Colette. Oh, Colette, can you unmute yourself now?
Okay.
There we go. That's better.
Well, there's so much of what he said, nearly everything he was saying was so shocking to hear. And, you know, so I welcome a little something to let it settle in me, because it was just coming over and over again. And it is so shocking, isn't it?
Yes. Sorry, Jane, did you want to say something?
I think it's interesting that quite a lot of service people, black service people who've from World War II have been in the news. I've been publicised on Facebook. I'm just admitting Trevor now. So there is much greater awareness now of.
We're back.
Hi, welcome back, Trevor.
Was that me? Was that me or General? I don't know what happened there. I don't know.
You froze.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Sorry, apologise. I can't. Where was I at?
Not a problem. We think it was the military secret service that actually tries to speak about it.
Yeah, keywords. You triggered keywords.
I think in a pub in Salford.
Right.
And you're just pointing out that you'd done 7 years. Yeah.
So my friend had pointed out that, you know, listen, he's been in the army, you know, he's done 7 years, you know, served his country, been in conflicts and lost mates. And the guy was like, oh, let me buy you a pint, which obviously steadfastly refused, you know what I mean, sort of thing. And then years later, as I became an actor, I got invited to do an awards ceremony at the town hall. And as I stood up to give this presentation, I looked to the right of me and there was a table of black servicemen in uniforms. So that's intrigued me and I thought, oh, that's interesting. What are they about? So afterwards, when I came down, I came off the platform, I wandered over to them and I couldn't believe the rank of these black servicemen. The lowest rank was a regimental sergeant major. Then it went to major and then the colonel. And I was like, what? So they were saying, I said, oh, I used to be in the army. And they were saying, oh, when was this? So I told them and they said, oh, because obviously they heard all the stories. It must have been rough back in the day then. And I went, rough? I said, what I'm seeing now fills me with so much pride. In fact, evolution. I'm not saying that the racism had gone, but the evolution of a rank of a black serviceman. Because when we were in the army, it was a known fact throughout the army that you were never, ever going to ascertain more than being a corporal. And in front of me, we had regimental sergeant majors, a couple of majors, a colonel, a lieutenant colonel, which was like amazing, you know? You've never envisaged it. I suppose it's a bit like saying, as a black person, Malaika will back me up, we never thought we'd see a black president apart from Morgan Freeman on 24. You know what I mean? So to see black servicemen ascertain that rank was massive. Massive. So, yeah, it was one of those things, really. So there's me. I mean, obviously, I'll answer any questions if he has. I don't know if there's anything in the chat, but was that okay?
Great. Trevor,
Thank you.
do you know whether those servicemen that you of rank, whether they're able to do things differently. I'm just thinking that often in the development of women entering leadership positions in different spheres, the first people in have got some hard choices to meet about how much they assimilate, how much the women act like men, or how much they can support each other to create spaces that allow them to be themselves. Do you see something similar happening for Black service personnel?
Yeah, I mean, speaking to a few of them and lads who I know even now, there is that scenario where change isn't immediate. And I think for Black service men and women of no rank, who are privates or whatever, will look to these officers to see what they can do. And like you said, that's not always feasible. You have to, some play the game. The problem is you also get is, for example, one of my best friends was the first Black policeman ever in GMP. And that's the same rank of chief superintendent. But back in the day, he got hassle of Black people and he got hassle of white people. And it's the same as a Black officer. If you're a Black officer in the army, Black servicemen will look to you to change things, to do things, but they're not always in that position to do it immediately. There is a series, like you say, a process of evolution, where obviously having that rank, yes, they would have a say, but how much say? Who's to know? Like you say, I had left the service, but speaking to, still want to sue, I still contact, want to sue every couple of years. I get an email or something, and having spoken about that, yeah, I would reiterate what you just say. I concur. Yeah, it's very difficult, I think, but I think once you're in the position, depending on where you are at, that can benefit normal service personnel or black service personnel who have not reached their rank. I would think.
Thanks, Trevor. Colette, do you want to say what you said while Trevor was coming back in again, or something similar?
I have three brothers, and they all at different times were in the army. And also I worked with in the careers centre, and there were a group of mainly Black young men who, high unemployment and all the things you mentioned, who were interested in joining the army. And it was, I feel quite emotional actually. The lies, the first lie that you were told, that you were all going to be together. I think it's just a lack of respect, for the individual. And you speak so clearly about your experience. It's very undeniable. And also your perspective of seeing how things have changed, and that it's been for you, it's like a huge step that I'm guessing that you didn't think would happen. So thank you. I've learned from you. Thank you.
No, thank you, Colette. Thank you. It's interesting because even now, I did a production last year in Canada. And it's for an organisation called Soldier Arts. So basically, Soldier Arts gives a avenue for servicemen and women to get into the arts from whatever sphere, whether it be acting, writing, directing, whatever they want to do. Because within the army, again, people are just people, and they have the idiosyncrasies, and those may come out in terms of they want to join the arts. So if you Google Soldier Arts, you'll see what the organisation is about. Soldier Arts Academy. And we went to Canada with a play it was about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, you know. And it's amazing, even now, where even within that group where I was at, nobody was racist. But what a few individuals mentioned was in terms of how even now in 2020 that black servicemen, black servicewomen aren't really recognised. Sorry about that. So, yeah, so it's even now in 2020 when we talk about the Army, Navy, Royal Air Force, how still really a lot of black servicemen and women aren't recognised, and how people sometimes have this blinkered view that within the services of the armed services of this country, we have lots of different ethnicities, you know? But yeah, things have changed. Things have changed. You're right, Colette, in a lot of ways, things have changed, but I still feel that there's still that blockage, you know?
Yeah.
You know, at the cenotaph, you know, people, I mean, I still go to the cenotaph, like I say, I buy 5 poppies every year because they're in remembrance of my 5 friends that I lost in conflict. And I live in Reddish now, and there's a like a memorial cemetery around the back of my house where there's a lot of soldiers who have passed away from the First World War to the Second. And on the first Remembrance Day, they had a meeting there, and I'd walked in, and it was really funny. I remember this is Remembrance Day, and the guy was at the gate, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, mate, you can't come in here." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Cemetery." He said, "I know, but it's for servicemen." And I said, "Yes." And I was a serviceman. I've served this country, and I've lost mates. And when I opened my coat and I had my poppies and my badge, and he was like, "Oh, right." You know, simple things like that. And it's just like, people just forget. They forget whether it's, you know, the black servicemen were rare or the Indian servicemen. The Gurkhas are the most loyal to the crown, you know, if people talk about, you know, and you just think, but it just is that. And I think, you know, I'm involved in sport a lot. You know, we talk about at the moment, you know, racism in sport, but it's a society thing. Racism in sport won't change until society changes. Now, as a Buddhist, it's quite interesting because I've spoken to a few soldiers afterwards, and I'm totally against war. I've seen the consequence of war. Obviously, I've lost people. I understand it in terms of how it's done. I have this little mantra which I say, war is decided over a cup of tea. In the middle, millions get killed, and it's ended over a cup of tea. Futile. That's my interpretation of it. But within that, people forget about the effort that people make of colour, you know, to the country. I'm black, I'm British, I'm proud of being British, I've served my country, but there's still that ignorance, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Trevor, do you think that it flags up the fact that being black and British is still a contested space?
Yeah.
People are still not recognizing that you're black and British.
Yes, Jane. You see, for me, this new acronym, government-led rhetoric, BAME, what's that about? I don't use it. I refuse to use it. I'm black. I'm an individual. Don't then try to disguise me and hide me within the umbrella of people of colour. Because no one from the government has came to me and said, do you mind if we say, do we mind if you're this? Do you mind? No one's ever said that to me. This is just government-led rhetoric, which they decide, oh, I'll tell you what. Now, again, as a Buddhist, you want hope. You want there to be hope, and all religions fundamentally comes from the same thing about love, understanding, and hope. We know within that we have extremists. We know, we understand that. But in terms of racism, someone asked me the question. I did a radio interview. Someone asked me a question: do I think racism will ever finish? Will ever end? And I said no. They said, but you're a Buddhist. You're supposed to have hope. I said, I am, and I do have hope, but I'm a realist. And while you, with all respect, are white and I am black, and there is a body of people out there who don't want you and I to get on, racism will always exist. It will not be eliminated. And that's a sad thing to say. Muhammad Ali quoted something in the 60s saying his father had told him by the time he's a man, racism would be finished. And now he's a man and it's still here. And I'm 62. And I was called the N-word when I was 6 years of age. And still, sporadically, I've been called it today. You know? So I think I've been involved in Black Lives Matter since 2012. Okay? I don't politicize the movement. I'm not about that. That's a black life and that's a white life. There isn't that. One isn't higher than the other. People who believe in Black Lives Matter and know it's about equality, that I, as a black man, can go down the street with you, Jane, and people aren't going to look twice and go, oh, there's a black man with a white woman. What's that black man doing with Vanessa? Etc. You know? So Black Lives Matter to people who care like me just want equality for black people throughout society, irrespective of any convention that they're involved in. But unfortunately, like I said, you know, we talk about evolution and animals being extinct. The white rhino, I think there's 2 of them left. Unless suddenly we have races that are extinct, it's not going to change, is it? Because people, you know, don't, you know, whether it's fair, no understanding, you know, the way that I am when I deal with racism, and again, I get the question when I'm in schools, I talk it, well, I speak about it, I'm not really a teacher, I'm not an expert, but we had a chat about genetics and about heritage, and the science teacher was trying to explain about people being mixed race, and the young people weren't getting it. He was too intellectualizing it. So I went to the canteen and I got 2 glasses. I got 1 glass of coffee and a glass of milk. And I poured a little bit of milk into the black coffee. And I said to the pupils, what's happening? And he said, it's changing colour, sir. So I went, okay. And I turned it a little bit more and he said, what's happening? It's got a bit lighter, sir. Eventually I poured all the milk into the coffee. And I said, what colour is it now? And he went, white. And I went, yes, but it's fundamentally black. You know, and the kids got it. They got it because it was on its simplest layman terms. I think the way that I am now, if someone says to me he's a racist, I'm like, fine, cool, let's talk about it. Why are you a racist? 25 years ago, my response may have been a little bit different. But I think it's in the moment how you respond to racism. It's in the moment. In school, like I said, a young black girl who'd been racist against since she was 9, and she said, what is the right way? And I said, there isn't any right way, I don't think. It's down to you as an individual. Some people confrontational, some people don't. Dialogue's obviously very, very important. As Buddhists, and as you people of religion, we know we try to open lines of dialogue with everybody, but people aren't always receptive. But I don't have an issue. I worked at a professional football club for a very, very long time. And I worked alongside a racist, and he openly said he doesn't like black people. Not a problem. But he never was derogatory towards me. He didn't use any expletives. I asked him the question, why? And he said, my mum got mugged by one when he was about 14. And I said, okay. So that means all black people are muggers, are they? That's like me saying all white people are heroin addicts. And he was like, but we never discussed it further, you know, and we were cordial in the morning, blah, 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 blah. But that was just his stance. So it's like, well, fine. I know where you're at, you know where I'm at. And I respect him for that. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's sad for me to say, because of my philosophy in life and what I want, and I want people to get on, like you say, and the Black Lives Matter movement, people have got to understand it. We didn't say Black Lives only matter. Yes, to reiterate what Warren said, all lives do matter. But at this present time, unfortunately, if Black lives did matter, we wouldn't have that movement. We wouldn't have the movement. You know, you see the different scenarios of when, you know, I mean, unfortunately, everything's led from America, you know, which comes into our country now. But we see scenarios of white people being stopped by the police and not treated abysmally, and you get black people being stopped for the same thing and being shot. So there has to be questions asked. We can only have dialogue.
Trevor, Sally would like to know if you would recommend the army to a young black person in 2020.
No. And it sounds a bit weird that was said because of the way.
Can I interrupt you, Trevor? It's not quite what I said. What I said was, if a young black person was looking to join the army, what advice would you give them?
Right. Okay. Right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Jane.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I would stress that because the different components to the army, you know, the different departments. So if you could join the infantry, where the infantry are just like dog soldiers and you're treated abysmally, but then there's different corps to that. So you might join the engineers, and depends what skills they've got. They might want to join intelligence. I'm very much against it in terms of when I've worked in schools and the army comes in, and I know now it's a case of, join the army. And that's just to like lower the unemployment figures.
Yeah.
And just send our kids
totally
to wars that don't exist, weapons of mass destruction. And I don't know people's political stance, but you know, as a kid from Mossad and Salford, we were brought up Labour. And then when you have a Labour leader saying that's weapons of mass destructions, and there isn't any, 2020, whether people like it or not, it's just my opinion, Tony Blair's a war criminal.
Totally.
And you know, Paul Hardcastle had a song, Vietnam 19, about the average age of a soldier. We now in the British forces, our soldiers are 18, 19, who go to Afghanistan and Iraq and are losing limbs and losing lives. And this is what I work with in Canada. Over PTSD guys have done that. So I would say to him, me personally, not really, unless you want something specific to do and it's for the right reason. But I still think they should dress it up, really.
I'm a retired teacher, and I worked in a secondary school. We had open days, and our head teacher, who was a Christian, used to allow the army to come in and do their thing. We created every time, like, they shouldn't be here, because it was a white, it was a working class area, about 85-90% ethnic minority, mostly Pakistani and Bangladeshi, and the rest were very poor white kids. And I just used to hate it. I grew up in Belfast. So I remember as a youngster seeing terrified 18-year-olds. I think they were 16 at one point.
That's right.
Absolutely terrified. So yeah,
They sorry to interject, Sal, but thank you for that. They told us, because the question we asked was, what about Northern Ireland? And they said, by the time you're 18, Northern Ireland will be finished. I was 18 on the 17th of June, on a Wednesday. On the Saturday, I was shipped out to Northern Ireland. On a Tuesday, I came under fire, where 4 rounds hit a wall 20 meters from my head. And there's an 18-year-old who's from Mossad and Salford, you know, could do a bit back in the days to say, look after yourself. Do you know what I mean? To suddenly be faced, you've got a gun in your hand and you're walking down the street, you never even think it's going to happen. And you stand there and you're frozen. And I've seen lots of soldiers urinate themselves in fear. And we were 18. And irrespective of what anybody says, and like I said, I wasn't a Buddhist then. I was brought up as Church of England. I was a choir boy at St. James in Moss Side. I wasn't really religious, but it's amazing how many soldiers, when you're under fire, the first thing you do is pray. Please, God, don't let it be me. You know? So, like Sally said, in Belfast, back in the days in the 70s when it was raw, you know, and no one knew. We didn't know what it was on about. So I'd say two tours as a squaddie on the street. And then this is going to make you laugh, I got promoted to the intelligence. If I was to show you a picture of me in the army back in the day, intelligence, as plain clothes in Belfast in 1977, exactly, Margaret, it's comical. They thought I was a relation to Mr. Thin Lizzy, Phil Lynott, because there wasn't really a lot of black people in Ireland in them days.
The first person of colour I met in Belfast was when I was 18.
Right.
When I grew up there. Yeah.
You know, so Phil Lynott, Thin Lizzy, and I'd be walking down the street of Belfast with my major undercover. Do you know what I mean? Hilarious. And, you know, we came under, you know, there's a couple of scary moments, but at one stage they pulled me out for 5 months because Intel had said, you know, we'd been compromised, obviously. Because again, there wasn't many, you know, and it's quite funny now when you go back, my friends married a girl from Belfast, his children are mixed race, and to hear them speak, you know, broad Northern Ireland is fantastic, you know what I mean? All right there, coming from a young black man, you know, how you doing? And you're like, and you see Chinese people from Northern Ireland, you see Asians, and they speak with that, you know, with that vernacular, and it's like, whoa, wow, you know. But back in the day, it was a scary thing, and you know, so again, it's the first lie. They were consistent with that we were going to stay together. You know, Northern Ireland will be finished by the time we get there. Like you say, you know, a week before you're out there, and I don't advocate anybody joining the army, and only because again, it's a futile. Just a futile thing. You know, we're going to wars that are not even. You know, I understand the fact is that nations might need an army to protect yourself from invasion, but you know, who's doing the invading here? You know, that's the sad thing about it.
Thank you, Trevor. Margaret was going to ask.
We have a question from Philip, and
yes.
Then we just need to bring it to a close.
I think you also answered Margaret's question, which was about how did you feel being a British or English soldier in Northern Ireland. I think it pretty much sort of covered most of that. But if there is anything else you wanted to add, then fine. But yeah, Philip, if you want to ask the last question.
Okay, I mean, this probably sounds like a naive question, really. While you were in the army, did you have any sense that there was a way of seeking some sort of appeal for the racist treatment you suffered? I mean, I assume not. And do you know if there is any mechanism now to actually deal with instances of racism in the army?
Yeah, when we were there, poo-pooed. You would complain to your senior officers, and that would be brushed aside. Get on with it. And the next day you would have an NCO that far from your face saying, how dare you report so-and-so, you're justice, know what you are, and blah, 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 you know, etc., etc. Like I say, evolution, and today's world where we're at, I imagined that wouldn't be the case now. There would be a process where you would go through. Because I think, like you say, social media is so powerful, isn't it? Social media is so powerful now. Any bit of misogyny, sexism, racism within the workplace, which the army is a workplace, remember, you know, should that get out into the wide world, you know, you've got to have a very good damage limitation policy. So I would think, yeah, that there would be that process now, mate. But not when we were back in the day. You had to suck it up.
Yeah, that's what I assumed would be the case. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I hope that was all right. Was it okay?
That was
Yeah.
more than all right, thank you. Jane, you were unmuted, so I thought you were going to say something there, but no, thank you, Trevor. We should have asked you straight away, I think. Malaika, thank you for that. As I was talking and saying Paul's not around, I was thinking, I wonder if you have been in the army military. Very clearly, your experience and what you've offered us tonight was a very full appraisal. And on one level, I suppose it's encouraging to hear that some things have changed and probably changed quite dramatically. But at the same time, there is a massive hurdle still that's being faced, that we have to try to deal with. And these seminars are about trying to find ways to deal with, to confront this racism, to actually try to move beyond it. And as you say, yeah, do you expect racism will ever end? No, because you're a realist. And you know, all forms of prejudice, all forms of hatred, all forms of ignorance, we expect to, unfortunately, to continue to the end of time on one level.
Yeah.
At the same time, yeah, go on, sorry.
Sorry to interject. I think the sad thing about my experience was the fact is, after I left, although I was reservist, I didn't really bother. I put it away, sort of thing. That was my coping mechanism. And I didn't go to reunions. People tried to contact me. I wasn't even interested. And it was very, very strange. Like you said, I've been an actor for a long time, but I had a bit of a profile. And it was only when my profile suddenly got big, I had people from the regiment who were perpetrators of racism, who wanted me to get involved in certain things. So that was like a kudos thing, you know? Yeah. And it's only been the last 2 years, really, where, due to the fact that I did this play, where the army thing has come back in. Whereas before, it was like, well, that was it. I'd done it, you know. And that's a sad thing. That's a sad thing about it, really.
Thank you. Yes, very much so. I've noticed that Rita's put in the chat that a good program tortures how the British dishonoured the African First World War dead. I saw that the other night as well. Very powerful program.
Yeah, powerful.
And Olivia has said what I think all of us want to say. Thank you so much, Trevor.
I enjoyed it.
Next week we have a round of applause, whether you're unmuted or otherwise, for Trevor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Really
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor.
Next week we're looking at Black experience in the arts. Trevor, stand by us again, just in case. Please.
It's Marcus, isn't it? That's my friend Marcus. Yeah, I know Marcus well. Malaika has a very wide contact list. You know what I mean? We love her. She, again, you know, I mean, she was very nice what she said about me, but she is 5 times more than what I do within the community. You know, in the process. Stop moaning. We're like,
brother. You're being too nice now.
I know, that's not like me. We're like the Black Jack and Vera. Believe me, we are. Yeah. But no, she's great. She's got a lot of contacts. But yeah, if there's anything else, you know, you'd like me to have a chat about, no worries. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. It's interesting. I'll try to jump in when I can. So I'm off to my buddies meeting now. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's some messages in the chat for you, Trevor.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It was lovely to see you all, meet you all. Thank you very much.
I'll catch up with you soon.
Oh, I hope not. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye, brother.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And I think we thought we'd end this week with the interfaith prayer. Are you going to? You got it there, Malaika? Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I've got it here.
Brilliant, thanks.
Bear with me.
Always.
We pause in quiet reflection to offer this prayer for a peaceful world. In our individual and personal ways, we call upon the Holy One who sustains our lives and who inspires us to live with compassion and kindness and peace. We ask for daily guidance in all our personal relationships, in our work and play, and in our community involvement, that we might model the possibilities of peace in everything we say and in everything we do. We pray for wisdom and compassion within the hearts and minds of all our world leaders who have the power and responsibility of making decisions that impact the presence of our peace. We pray for courage, dedication, integrity within the spirits of all those who work for peace around the world. We pray for all those who harbour thoughts and feelings of hatred, violence and greed, that their hearts and minds and souls will be transformed into your likeness of compassion and kindness. We are thankful for your presence within our lives and ask for your blessings as we try to live peaceful lives and seek ways for all our people in life, in peace and justice. Over to Warren.
Amen, and thank you.
Amen.
Thank you all for joining us. It was a smaller select band than usual, but another very powerful evening. We have a lot of work to do. Let's keep spreading the words. Let's keep encouraging others to join us in the, I won't use the word battle, but in the ongoing challenge to remove and eradicate racism as far as we can from our societies, especially from our communities, but also from this world. Because we're all special, and thank you for sharing this journey with us.
Thank you.
God bless. Hopefully see you next week.
Thank you.
Peace be with you.